All right, we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gridiron AI Rise and Grind Week 1 DFS Strategy Pod. We're calling it Rise and Grind this week because it's 8 a.m. on the East Coast here where we're at. I'm joined here by Rob. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good, Nick. How we doing over there?
We're good. We're good. So just real quick intros. I am Rob and I are both data scientists for Gridiron AI, gridironai.com. Make sure you check us out. Use code all capital letters 1 month free for a free 1 month trial. We got projection models. We have betting models. Basically, like if you're tired of maybe eking out a 500 record in your betting endeavors on whatever sports book you're on, give us a try. Machine learning is all the rage. There's a reason why all these corporate firms are using data science now. Give it a shot. You got nothing to lose for a month, maybe some money if if we don't do well. But check it out, and if you don't like it, it's not for you. Fine. But the point is of this podcast is to talk about some week 1 DFS. So we really wanted to approach this with the idea that first part of the podcast, we're going to be it's like quick hit, how to win some bar money. Basically, if you're going to get in a couple head-to-heads with some people, maybe a 12-person league with your buddies, and you just want to dominate, we're going to give you the plays that really are just the best plays. And those, you don't want to really get cute and play anything off the wall, like, I don't know, try to hit like that receiver that's going to have a 60-yard touchdown. You don't need to do all that. Just play the best play, high volume. Um, and just win. So we'll jump right in because we want this to be about 5 minutes, and then if you want to tune out before we start talking about nerd stuff, that's fine. But go ahead, Rob. What are some, we call them cash plays, high floor plays, low variance plays? What are some solid plays you got for it?
Yeah, so I think a couple easy ones that jump out to me this week. At least at the quarterback position, I think if you go with some of those high volume passing and running quarterbacks, your Kyler Murray's, your Lamar Jacksons, your Jalen Hurts, those are a good place to start because you can almost guarantee a good chunk of points. So right now I have Kyler Murray as kind of my number one cash play for the week. He's only at 7,200 over on DraftKings. I think right now the spread between Arizona and Kansas City this week, I want to say that the Cardinals are around 6-point dogs right now, and I think that line has been increasing because there's some uncertainty into the receivers that Kyler Murray is going to have available. So I like Arizona playing from behind, maybe Kyler Murray running for some chunk plays, maybe airing out a little bit to some of his receivers. So with the high total in that game, I think Kyler Murray is a pretty safe cash play at quarterback.
Okay. That's interesting. Kyler Murray's not really on my radar for cash, but I do love him in tournaments. I guess a little bit of I want to highlight what you said. The Cardinals receiving core is pretty thin right now, and the reason being DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for 6 weeks. Rondale Moore was ruled out. People were excited about him maybe running down the field more than a yard or two and then catching the ball. The lowest ADOT of all time last year, Rondale Moore. I don't know if you knew that. It was like 1.5 yards, like lower than some running backs. But we'll talk about this later. It's not for the faint of heart, but AJ Green is firmly in play this week. Not in cash, not in what we're talking about right now, but if you want to stay on and listen why 75-year-old AJ Green might be a good play this week, just stay tuned. So I also have Jalen Hurts is probably the number one cash game play for me. He's going to be really, really highly owned just across all different formats. The Eagles have the number one offensive line, according to a lot of expert rankings and metrics. The Lions don't really have a great defense. They're a fun team, fun offense, but their defense is not good. They have one of their edge rushers is out opposite Aiden Hutchinson, who should make a little bit of noise, but I mean, welcome to the league. You're getting one of the best offensive lines in the league. And who's going to cover AJ Brown? I don't care how good Jalen Hurts is. AJ Brown is going to be wide open. Devontae Smith's going to be wide open. So I really like locking in Jalen Hurts. You got some running backs or wide receivers for the people?
Absolutely. So in the running back department in kind of those smaller leagues where you're just trying to win a couple bucks off your friends, I kind of like to run with at least one of the highest salaried or highest owned running backs. So this week, I think above 8,000 on DraftKings, we got Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and Austin Eckler. So personally, out of that bunch of four, I like Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. Those high value running backs that have a chance to just go off and have those monster games, well over 100 yards, breaking into that DraftKings 100-yard bonus. I don't think you can go wrong with Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry this week. Sometimes Derrick Henry takes a little bit to get going in the season. Sometimes we see him break out later. That's the only thing that's kind of deterring him from me and kind of having me lean a little bit more towards Taylor. Having said that, obviously Eckler and McCaffrey offer high PPR upside, but those are guys that are going to be less likely to break over 100 yards and have those huge games.
Yeah, I definitely like both those plays. It's to me, it's great when I run my optimizer and when I'm looking for cash plays, I don't really put any limitations on the optimizer. I'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into the nerd section of the show. But Christian McCaffrey is on 100% of lineups in the untethered optimizer. Typically, we want to hold up. So I guess I wish just pause the stream for a second. I wish we had a call in. That was my buddy. Every morning I talk to him about these plays. So that's kind of like what we're setting up here. I would love to have a line where people could call in. Because I do think some of my friends would call in and there's some sharp guys. It'd be some good conversation. But when you get talking here, I'll see if you can hop in the chat and ask us some questions. But anyway, Christian McCaffrey is on 100% of the lineups in the optimizer. It's just a no-brainer. I mean, I think if you're not showing up to your head-to-heads with Christian McCaffrey this week, what are you doing? He's projecting for about 2 more points this week than any other running back, even Jonathan Taylor. He just has a role in this offense they're not going to let up on him because he's injury prone or whatever we're telling ourselves. Matt Rule literally said there's only one way to use Christian McCaffrey, and that's to attack. So it's a 1-week season when we're doing these daily fantasies. So I'm betting on him to stay healthy for a full game because I was betting on him to stay healthy for a full season in redraft. So I'm all in on McCaffrey. Love the Henry play. Typically, it's a popular thing in cash games to pay up at running back. Another one that's going to be really popular is Saquon Barkley. They just don't really have anywhere else to go in that offense with their thin wide receiver core. And I think right there, I mean, honestly, you don't really need to stray from that too much. Just lock in those 3 running backs and then make it work at wide receiver. Speaking of wide receiver, who else do you like there?
So before we get on to wide receiver, I did also want to throw in kind of as an RB2, looking to save a little bit of money and not spending up over $8,000. I wanted to mention Najee Harris for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy just had a tremendous amount of volume last year. I think his snap count percentage was right up near 100%. And he's only valued at 6,400 over on DraftKings. So for the amount of usage he's going to get in a game where the Steelers are probably going to be trailing, I think you get tremendous value there. And I have him as one of my top 5 highest valued running backs this week. So that's another, I think, pretty solid cash play at running back.
Yeah, definitely agree. Also a Steelers fan, so shout out Steelers. Yeah, again, a lot of people. So one of the things you're going to get coming into week 1 is some redraft bias. People aren't really high on Najee this year. They think he's going to take a step back because the offense is changing because Ben's gone. But I mean, he's just projecting for such a monster workload. 380 touches last year, led all running backs in the NFL. And I mean, they're going to lean on him with Mitch Trubisky behind center. So, all right, I like that. This seems like a misprice. I'll throw in a couple cheap price guys. I mean, Dameon Pierce, man. I think he's going to be like a workhorse every down back. He has to hold off Rex Burkhead. Burkhead's. And he's priced at 4,800. Again, another misprice because when he was priced at 4,800, I don't think DraftKings algorithm was projecting him as the starter, and he's firmly the starter.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great play. And I think another strategy that actually kind of works in these smaller contests is just kind of having one of those cheaper players, either like a $3,000 wide receiver who's third string, maybe a rookie, or taking advantage of a rookie running back at 4,800, you think is going to have high volume and then allows you to spend up at other positions. So I like Dameon Pierce a lot. That's a good call.
And we'll talk about some rookie wide receivers, but betting on rookies just in general is a good strategy, but betting on rookie running backs is the best strategy in terms of what rookies come into the league like ready, like NFL ready. So typically we see rookie running backs like come in at their peak and then slowly kind of drop off over time. Whereas receivers, they have they need a few games or even a few seasons to get up to speed to the NFL. But yeah, really excited about Dameon Pierce as well. All right, let's go to wide receiver, my favorite position, because like I said, we wanted to get our people that don't have a lot of time for us, get them out of here with some good plays. So what do you got at wide receiver?
So I think you're going to like this one based on the quarterback you mentioned earlier, Jalen Hurts. I'm going to go with who I think should be his top stack option in A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown right now is only priced at 6,400. Which is a tremendous value for a guy that can actually just go off for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. This game has the potential to shoot out too. I think this game's kind of falling under the radar a little bit for both teams. I think the total right now is right up around 47 or 48 points. So, I mean, it's in the realm of possibility that, Philly could end up trailing in this game, or the game script could be positive for there to be a lot of passing and A.J. Brown to have a huge game. And, as he gets more comfortable with Jalen Hurts and he starts having those big games like he had with the Titans, you're not going to see him at 6,400 in a couple weeks. So I think that's a pretty solid play at wide receiver.
Yeah, that's definitely a weird price for him. I think I just love A.J. Brown so much that I think he should be priced up. And I have kind of a little bit of dynasty bias. To me, I view him as closer to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson than his price would, I guess, suggest this week. But yeah, he's just. I think some people mistakenly think of A.J. Brown as this go up and get it like Mike Evans, Mike Williams type receiver because he's so big. That's not really his game. His game is he can do that, but his game is he's also a run after the catch guy. So I'm really excited. I think they're going to dial up some layups for him and Jalen Hurts, who happen to be best friends. They're very, very tight, very, very close. And I think that matters really. And again, we'll talk about it later. You can double stack Jalen Hurts with Devontae Smith because I don't think anybody will be on that. But that's just a sneak peek for the people. Also at wide receiver, like I said, you don't want to really get too cute. One that is really popping in terms of ownership and projection is Michael Pittman. He's another 100% of lineups guy when I run the optimizer. Michael Pittman, they are playing, one moment. Let me filter out here. Do you know who they're playing actually?
They're playing the Texans.
They're playing the Texans. So the Texans are not known for their stout defense. And Michael Pittman is, by all accounts, a fantastic wide receiver, really primed for a monster breakout this year. It already started happening with Carson Wentz last year, but he's got Matt Ryan, which I don't have a ton of confidence in. I think he's more of what we saw Phillip Rivers when he was with the Colts than someone to be excited about. But yeah, I got Michael Pittman as the highest owned wide receiver. I think he's a great play, especially again in smaller leagues and in head-to-heads. I do think it makes a lot of sense to get off of him in tournaments, and we can talk about that later. Another wide receiver I like, and again, this kind of goes off of your quarterback play, is Marquise Brown. How's he looking in your stuff?
I have him actually pretty high. He looks pretty solid at 6,200, and he should get pretty good volume. Like you said, where else is the ball going to go? Maybe AJ Green. But another positive for Marquise Brown, over his last 8 games, and I guess this does date back when he was playing with the Ravens, he gets targeted a fair amount in the red area, inside the 20 and inside the 10. He's in the top 10 there over the last 8 games. So in a game where we should be seeing some high volume, in a game where they should be trailing, Marquise Brown's a great play.
Yeah. And if I cannot fall all over myself here, I would love to show our optimal stack of the week, which again, for the people that just want the quick hitters, everybody loves a good stack. Why do we like stacks? We like stacks because they basically reduce the amount of things we need to get right. And I'm going to bring up the optimal stack because it has Marquise Brown in it. And I'd like to explain a little bit about why it is important to stack, because our marketing guy, Evan, just could not believe that I would ever suggest 2 wide receivers from the same team in the same lineup. So check us out over on Instagram. I'm posting a lot of different content like this, at least trying to keep a consistent schedule. Over there on the Instagram, it's gridiron.ai. And as you can see here, this is data from ETR. They looked at the top 100 lineups in the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings and compared that to the field. So what are those top 100, the best lineups doing to separate themselves from the field? Because that's a way we can spot edges. So before I go over the stack here, the top 100 teams in DraftKings Millionaire Maker contest stack their QB with 2 wide receivers, not just 1, 2. We call that a double stack, 35.7% of the time. And the field did this 30.6% of the time. So again, a small edge there. If you believe that the top 100 teams are building their lineups the way they should be, which I tend to agree with that. They're also bringing it back. So again, our optimal stack, how do we find it? We optimize for 150 lineups, and this is the stack that came up in the top scoring lineup. And I did put some rules in there to force the double stack with the bring back. But again, this is what it came up with: a Patrick Mahomes double stack with Marquise Brown. So what do you think about this?
I think it's a solid stack. I'm actually not super high on Juju Smith-Schuster this week. I want to take the wait and see approach with him. But I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling, at his ownership, he's a guy who could just go off for a huge game. Patrick Mahomes, he loves throwing the ball downfield, right? Who's he gonna throw it to? Tyreek Hill isn't there anymore. Obviously, Travis Kelce, you could make an argument to throw in the stack. He's someone I'm a little less certain about too. Like at 34 years old, how long can this guy keep putting up these huge numbers? Last year he did regress a little. I think he's going to regress again this year. So I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Marquise Brown is a solid 3-stack. Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm off on him, but I could see the argument made for him. Like he should be the number 1 guy in this offense, but I kind of want to see it first.
Yeah.
And someone else people are kind of forgetting about is Mecole Hardman. What role is he going to have? I think there were a couple games last year where Tyreek Hill wasn't involved or either out with an injury. And I don't think Mecole Hardman really stepped up that much. I think Mahomes was kind of sprinkling the ball around. So I'm curious to see if Hardman can really make his way into this offense.
Yeah. I was reading a couple articles on The Athletic. I love the way that the Chiefs are approaching their offense this year. The beat writers that out of Kansas City, the messaging from the team is that they want to kind of Swiss Army knife this offense because Patrick Mahomes can spread the ball. He is elite at making the decisions, at scanning the field. So they want to utilize that instead of having him be, is Travis Kelce open? No. Is Tyreek Hill open? No, or vice versa, because that seemed to be easy for defenses to scheme against. I mean, an explosive player, but if you can predict where the ball is going, it's a little easier to scheme for. Now they have 4, 5, 6 receivers that all have these different skill sets that defenses have to account for. And Patrick Mahomes said himself, I'm sorry, fantasy players, it's going to be someone different every week, which for season long, that's disappointing to hear. For DFS, that's great for us because people are going to try to guess. And this week, they think Juju's the guy. We're going to go ahead and put him in there, but then we're going to put him with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, which under 1% ownership, all he needs is 1 deep ball. That speeds up the game, forces Kyler Murray and the Cardinals to put their foot on the gas, maybe throw a couple deep shots to Marquise Brown. The receiving archetypes here as these downfield receivers that speed up the game are the ones you want to include in your stack because, like you said, you're just looking for the game environment. And again, when you're stacking, this is more of a tournament play than a cash play. You want the 0.01% outcome, right? You don't want to finish 505 and barely get your money back. If you're playing tournaments, you want to win thousands of dollars. And putting yourself in a position to be unique, to hit these 99th percentile outcomes, you gotta get weird. So this stack is actually not even that off the wall. We might suggest some crazier stacks later, but I really like this one. So we'll close that up and get back to some just solid plays here. Anybody else at wide receiver that you're liking this week?
Yeah, so I also kind of like on the other side of that game in Philadelphia is I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, for kind of the same reasons as AJ Brown. This has a chance to be a competitive, high-scoring game. And in Detroit, there's not a whole lot of question about where the ball is going to go, right, and where the yards are going to come from. It's going to be DeAndre Swift, and it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe some TJ Hawkinson sprinkled in there. But at 6,100 in this game, I think he offers a lot of value. And this is another guy that Jared Goff has really come to like inside the 20-yard line. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a pretty solid play too. And he's kind of middling in ownership as well. So that might be, a spot where you can gain a little bit of leverage in your cash.
I have him at 6% owned. By the way, and Andy in the chat too, our friend Ryan, one of the top DFS players in the world right now. Him and I have been working together to kind of aggregate projections from across the industry, which that spreadsheet that you just saw a sneak peek of, I'll drop that in the Slack after the stream. We're aggregating projections from all the big projection platforms and also ownership. So he just dropped that in the spreadsheet this morning. So I'll upload that to the database. I have ownership projections from about 8 different sites, and it's interesting to see there's not consensus agreement on all of the players. Like Christian McCaffrey, one site has him at about 30% owned. Another site has him about 25% owned. I saw that you were at like 17 or 18%. So I think that aggregating all of those ownership projections will get us closer to what we might see in the Millionaire Maker. And we'll talk a little bit more maybe not this podcast, but every week I'll kind of want to layer in another strategy piece just to kind of teach people what we're looking out for. But ownership is very important in tournaments and leverage, which I would love for you to talk about your leverage metric here after we finish up with tight ends. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff security blanket, his Golden Tate type player, throwing it back to some Lions players of old. Some other players I like, good values, high ownership. That means people are on them, which is kind of, we want to gravitate towards the wisdom of the crowd in cash because there's no downside if you're wrong because everybody's playing these plays. You just need to be right about 1 or 2 people. Justin Jefferson, if you want to pay up at wide receiver, it's a little tough if you want to squeeze in Christian McCaffrey. T Higgins, man, we're going to play the hell out of T Higgins this year, man. We're going to play him so much. And Christian Kirk is a good value. What do you think about Christian Kirk this year? He's an interesting one.
I honestly had no idea that he was on the Jaguars till like 2 weeks ago. Heard someone mention it. And again, I'm taking the wait and see approach on the Jaguars. And I always thought Christian Kirk was always kind of a letdown in Arizona. I think he kind of came in and had this expectation of him kind of being the next big guy, and it never really took off. I don't really see why it would happen in Jacksonville, but I guess if you look at the rest of that wide receiver core, he is probably the top guy. But until I see it, especially from this Jaguars team that really struggled last year, still trying to figure out their identity, not someone I'm interested.
Yeah, so Christian Kirk, from a talent perspective, he had his opportunity, like you said, in Arizona to kind of separate. He had a solid year last year. It just was never like an explosive. You just never viewed him as like this explosive like game breaker. He's got an interesting role where he's like like they call him like a field stretching like slot, and I think that's going to be a really good for Trevor Lawrence. I almost forgot his name. That's how bad of a season Trevor Lawrence had last year. It's like I could barely recall one of the best quarterback prospects of the last decade's name. Hopefully he takes a step. I'm kind of betting on that with Christian Kirk as well. Christian Kirk is coming in kind of, I mean, people aren't shying away from him. 13.6. Other reasons like Christian Kirk, he just doesn't have a lot of target competition. They're playing Washington, which Washington has a pretty solid run defense. They have a solid defensive line, and James Robinson's banged up. I don't think Travis Etienne is going to be the between the tackles guy. They're going to have to air it out. They're going to have to get creative because Marvin Jones is ancient. He's already declining. His like underlying metrics, yards per route run, ADOT, all that stuff is coming down. Exciting player in his prime, but I think the sun's setting on his career. Evan Ingram, perennially disappointing tight end, super athletic, but I mean, he can't hold on to the ball, can't catch the ball. Christian Kirk is the only reliable option in that offense outside of Travis Etienne for Lawrence, I think. Zay Jones, are we going to buy into Zay Jones? Actually, he does pop in the tournament player pool, but it's a little ugly. Maybe you don't have to go there, but Christian Kirk's an interesting one. Let's see here. DJ Moore, again, not a bad play. I think people are going to be on him. Just a really talented player. I just had to shout out DJ Moore. Hopefully you get some better quarterback play this year. All right. Ready to move to tight end?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What do you got for us at tight end?
I mean, I'm going to keep it real simple here, and I'm just going to say Mark Andrews. He had the biggest season last year of his career. He was the leading tight end first year. Kelsey was finally eclipsed, finally dethroned in that department. Lamar Jackson going up against the Jets, who are still kind of a young team. After Lamar Jackson not getting paid this year, he might be out for vengeance to really drive up his contract. And, I could see a big game from him too. He's another cash play. But I fully expect Mark Andrews to be a part of that offensive assault. I think they're going to put down the Jets this week. And even at 6,800, I might be willing to pay up for him if I can find some other positions I can save money on.
Yeah. Definitely, again, when I was running my optimization, Travis Kelce is the favorite tight end. So you can, like Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, like pay up at tight end. They're both 68 and 6,600, which based on how much they should separate from the group in terms of volume, in terms of just raw, like fantasy points, they probably should be priced up a little bit more. So a lot of people are going to be on Travis Kelce. A little less so on Mark Andrews, it seems. But my strategy is if you need to save money somewhere, just punt at tight end. It can be hard if Travis Kelce really goes off. But one really interesting punt tight end that I like just for the people right now is Brevin Jordan. He's the Houston Texans tight end. He's going to be close to min-priced. He actually had a solid rookie season last year and got plenty of targets from Davis Mills. It's just not really someone that's on people's radar. I think he will be a consistent tight end play this year for us as long as he stays healthy. Have you ever heard of Brevin Jordan?
Yeah, of course. He was kind of a popular punt play a couple of weeks last year when he was kind of starting to emerge in Houston. And I completely agree with that. Tight end is a good position to punt at, especially in these cash games and these, smaller league tournaments you might be playing in. And if another player I like this week in that department, if you're looking to spend a little less money, is Pat Freiermuth. I know a lot of people aren't very high on the Steelers right now with Mitch Trubisky, but the Bengals were actually pretty poor against the tight ends last season. They ranked 30th in adjusted points allowed to tight ends, and I think once Mitch gets into the red zone there, he's going to be looking for a safe target, and I think Pat Freiermuth offers that, and at 4,200, you can save a few bucks elsewhere.
Yeah, all Pat Freiermuth does is score touchdowns. And he did it at Penn State. He had a really solid rookie year last year. I love that play. 2.3% owned. So again, great tournament play. But if I were to if I had to make a choice on what to do at tight end in cash, I would pay up. I think you can find enough value to lock in one of these high priced tight ends and figure it out elsewhere. Okay, let me take a look at the show doc here. All right. Games to target. Are there any specific game environments that you are targeting, or have you thought about it at the game level so much, or are you more in the player takes mode right now?
So I guess it depends. So in the cash games, I'm very much just in the players. I'm not worrying too much about the games. Maybe a little bit. You start talking about GPP, big field tournaments. I have been thinking about it a lot, and kind of I really just want to fade the Raiders and the Chargers game. Um, at least on two occasions last year, I got burned when the Chargers were in a game that was, the total line was over 50 points or something, and it ended up being like 40 points. And then all my lineups were just destroyed. So I kind of have that sour taste in my mouth, and I want nothing to do with that game. In terms of stacks, maybe playing one player on each side, possibly like an Austin Eckler, maybe if you wanted to get weird with Hunter Renfro. But kind of the game I've been looking at, the one I already talked about, was kind of Philadelphia and Detroit. But I think ownership could be pretty high in that one as well. But another game I think is getting flying under the radar a little bit, and I think there could be some big points out of in a game that's projected to be high scoring, is Minnesota and Green Bay. These teams have duked it out a couple times over the last few years. There's some speculation on what Green Bay is going to be able to do with the offense without Devontae Adams, or without any real receiving core. I mean, they're having big problems over there, but they still have Aaron Jones, they still got A.J. Dillon, and they still have Aaron Rodgers. And you look at the other side of the ball, Minnesota, obviously a ton of offensive talent. I think this is a game that could shoot out. These two teams were in a shootout the last time that they played. I think the total line was over 60 points. There's a lot of pieces in this game you can pick from. That's kind of the hard part. Dalvin Cook could have a huge game. He, has torn it up against Green Bay in the past. You got Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. There's a lot to choose from. This is a game that I
like. Yeah, definitely. So I'm looking at, and I would love to develop this metric ourselves eventually. We just have so many things we want to do, but Establish the Run has the GPP game scores, which it's kind of like a mix of Vegas over-under, pace, the game total, and ownership. So I think a lot of people are talking themselves out of Chargers Raiders like immediately. They're like assuming that everyone's going to be on that game, so they're kind of talking themselves out of it. My ownership projections have Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, like the double stack there, all of them under 10% rostered. So just keep an eye on ownership, because that could change as we approach Sunday. These ownership percentages do change throughout the week. But if people are going to like talk themselves out of it, I think I might be in on that game and try to stack it up a couple different ways. KC Arizona also scores high in the game score. It's going to be popular, but I really like those popular high scoring games and then getting contrarian in the pieces that I choose. And I think with no one's going to play AJ Green, so that's a fun way to get exposure to this game. You could play Kyler Murray instead of Mahomes, because I think Mahomes is the popular quarterback to play. So you could do that. You could run the stack that I put on Instagram and just get creative. Like if you're going to don't play Juju and Travis Kelce in tournaments. That's a way to, one, burn up a lot of salary on players that if they hit, you're not really gaining a whole lot. If you hit Kyler Murray, AJ Green stack, and MVS has a long touchdown, you picked a popular game, but you're going to be so unique in the other teams that you're competing against, because they probably won't have those lower owned pieces. So just one way to think about it. Surprisingly, another game that's popping in the DK game score for Establish the Run is Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, which is kind of surprising. Are there any
love that game. I love that game too. That's one I was almost afraid to mention it because of how low the total is, and I think between these two teams, the range of outcomes is so volatile. I mean, I can see this being a 14-10 game or a 41-30 game.
Yeah, so I think people, I don't know. Think about this way. If you didn't know anything about the NFL, right? Like think about I don't really know anything about the Premier League, but I know who Manchester United is, right? I know who Chelsea is. Like the Steelers are that type of football team, like an American football. They're just a good organization that always seems to figure it out. Yes, they've gotten lucky with quarterbacks over the past 4 decades. I don't know, is that luck or is that just good coaching, good organization, good system? So yes, Mitchell Trubisky, trash, but he's surrounded by a very, very exciting offense, and it's the Bengals, right? I know they went to the Super Bowl last year. I'm a Steelers fan, so take this with a grain of salt. The Steelers have always played the Bengals tough, and the Bengals have always played the Steelers tough. Those divisional games create these scenarios where we have schemes and stuff that can kind of offset talent inefficiencies, all that stuff. So I like the Pitt and Cincinnati game. I like one of the optimal stacks. It was almost the one I posted is Joe Burrow double stack, which I don't think will be as popular as people think. Jamar Chase is going to be popular, but stacking him with T. Higgins will not be. Joe Burrow is not going to garner a lot of ownership because he doesn't run the ball as much as some of these other quarterbacks. And then you can bring it back with, I mean, the biggest dog of all dogs in this preseason, George Pickens. And if it were my way, like he would be on every single lineup. Like I have a feeling that he's being projected for like 4% ownership right now in the Millionaire Maker. I think that could get up to 10 just because people are going to want to play him. But I don't know. I guess like as a non-Steelers fan, like how are you feeling about playing George Pickens this week?
Again, for the Steelers, I'm very much on this wait and see approach when it comes to that receiving core. They just have so many guys: George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. I have no idea where the ball is going to go in that department. Freiermuth, that tight end is going to get some targets. Najee Harris is going to get some volume. So that's kind of on the run back. I'd be very torn on where to go. But I do love the Joe Burrow stacks. And I love the idea of fading Chase and bringing in T. Higgins, maybe even Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd had he had a few good games last year. He might be able to get you 18, 20, 22 points. Or if you even wanted to throw in Joe Mixon. The Steelers team over the past few seasons have given up a lot of explosive plays to running backs. They ranked 29th in adjusted points allowed to running backs last year. And he's only 7,100, and he's a guy who can get you 30 points as well. So there's a lot of ways you can stack the Cincinnati side of the ball. And, I mean, you could even run it back with Najee Harris because I think he's going to get a lot of targets in the passing game. But, hey, if you want to get weird with George Pickens, save some money on wide receiver, maybe get some leverage as a potentially lower-owned guy for GPPs, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I hope – because I don't think George Pickens is a good play if he's going to be popular in tournaments. He's a great play if he's going to be under 5% owned just because, like, I like targeting that uncertainty because people are assuming that maybe he kind of eases in, but I think it's well within the range of outcomes that he just comes in his first NFL game and just dominates. You know what I mean? Like we've seen this before. Like they're not putting their number one corner on him. I was assuming all preseason that he was the guy in 2 wide receiver sets, and then Claypool would rotate in as like the slot receiver in 3 wide receiver sets. I think I was wrong on that. I think Pickens is going to rotate in 3 wide receiver sets and move Claypool to the slot. And then Claypool will be on the outside in 2 wide receiver sets, which matters because you can't score fantasy points if you're not on the field. So that's one reason why I think like the mega big brain play is like at basically no ownership playing Claypool. That's like a let's win the $1 million play. You know what I mean? That's not a cash play. That's not like even like 100-person tournament play. But yeah, I think the way you put it is like just double stack the Bengals, maybe swap out one of the receivers for Tyler Boyd to get like really weird, and then run it back with different versions of run backs. You can run, if you were doing 150 lineups, you can do a Claypool lineup with the double stack on the other side. You can do a Freiermuth lineup, a Pickens lineup, a Najee lineup. I think like there's a like I'm not someone that's going to run 3 on one team and then bring it back with 2 on the way back. That even in like the big tournaments is not a winning strategy over like a large sample. I don't think. Pick one and just hope you hit the nuts on that stack, and I think you're setting yourself up to get a big score there. So those are the 3 games that really like pop in this GPP score. Is so that's Chargers, Raiders. That's Cardinals, Chiefs, and Bengals, Steelers. Again, Established Run is a popular site. People seeing those games pop in the game score model will draw ownership towards them. So again, this could change. It's fluid, but here's how you think about it, right? Take a look at the ownership at the game level and just see like what the not so popular games are that do have that chance to shoot out, and then target that game. That's just a good way to approach tournaments, I think.
So Nick, do you have the GPP game score for Minnesota and Green Bay? I'm curious if my thoughts are lining up with anyone else.
So I'm not sure what's going on. I think it's probably a pricing thing, but on DraftKings, Green Bay and Minnesota, they have a positive score, which is good. They pop anything over 1 kind of is what you're looking for. They're 1.2 game score on FanDuel. So I think if you're playing on both sites, like that's another game to add to that list. For whatever reason on DraftKings, I think it's because you can't really project any of the Green Bay wide receivers for anything significant, and it's PPR. So we can talk about that real quick. Who's the Green Bay wide receiver you're targeting if you have to pick one?
It's Aaron Jones.
Yeah, there you go.
And yes, I know he's a running back, but we saw games last year where Devontae Adams was out and Aaron Jones' production went through the roof. This first game where they really don't even have the receivers they want as their starters in the starting lineup, there's going to be a lot of 2 running back sets, and Aaron Jones is going to get a ton of targets. Like, I'm sorry, like it just has to happen, right? It feels like a no-brainer, easy bet. But I mean, getting serious, I don't even know who's playing for Green Bay at wide receiver. Who do they even have? Is Christian Watson healthy? I saw he was questionable. I mean, a lot of the names on there I wasn't even familiar with that they were starting to think about starting this Sunday.
Yeah, so I've filtered this by ownership. So the people that I guess the consensus, they love Aaron Jones. That's the piece they want from Green Bay. He's the highest percent owned player in that game. Justin Jefferson is a little bit behind. Irv Smith is surprisingly the next guy up, and that's because he's a cheap tight end at 3,400. So you can punt and stack him in a game stack. So I can understand that. I'm fading Irv Smith. Sorry. I'm just not going to – he's not a great value, according to me. He's not projecting super well. I'm going to let other people take that shot because I think like in that same price range, there's other places you can go at tight end. And then the receiver that the field seems to think is the number 1 now in Green Bay is Romeo Doubs. And I like that, but I'm not taking the popular rookie in this sense. So Pickens, I'm all in on if he's going to be low owned. If people are sure that Doubs, whatever 5th, 6th round draft pick this year, is going to come in and get Aaron Rodgers' trust right away, I'm going to fade that and play Randall Cobb. I know it's gross, but I mean, he's probably good for a touchdown in this game. If he's good for some looks in the red zone with Aaron Rodgers, I think. Otherwise, just pray that he gets a lot of targets and short passes because he's ancient, and I don't think he has it anymore. But if Rodgers thinks he has it and he's going to look his way, he's going to be a good fantasy play. Just period. I don't care how old he is. And then another one. I mean, Sammy Watkins. It's gross. It's gross. But because it's gross means that these are good tournament plays, right? Like I'm trying to think like this year, like when I'm going through my process, like who are the players I'm shying away from? And like in certain instances, those are probably plays I should gravitate to in tournaments, right? Because if I'm shying away from them, everybody's shying away from them. So we got Sammy Watkins coming in at 3.5% ownership. I mean, it's not fun, but it could happen. AJ Dillon, again, a good pivot off of Aaron Jones. He could score a couple touchdowns in this game. Yeah, that's a really interesting game. Really interesting game. Yeah, so let's move on to leverage. We have about 9 minutes left here. Leverage. How are you defining leverage this year, and how are you using it in your model?
So I'm kind of defining leverage as, comparing what predicted ownership is versus what the ownership should be. And I guess, the way I derive it, I mean, the ownership of a player should be based off kind of what their upside is and the probability that they're going to hit that upside. So basically, it's projected ownership divided by or implied ownership, essentially. And if you're looking for values greater than one, really big values, if you start getting up 6, 7, those are just dumb plays that are never going to hit. If you did hit them, you'd be in great shape. But generally, if you can get a ratio between 1 and 3%, those are pretty good, solid leverage plays where certain players might not be as owned as they should be, and they have a pretty decent chance of reaching their upside. So if you hit on those, and it's not so unreasonable to think so, you're going to get some leverage, especially in those GPP tournaments.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, what are who are some of the highest leverage plays according to your model?
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of skip the really high plays, but a couple people that have stood out to me that I like. One is Damian Harris, who has a pretty high leverage score. And I'm a little bit of a homer here. I'm a Patriots fan. Everyone's writing off the Patriots, including myself. But Damian Harris was one of the highest graded running backs last year from PFF, I believe. And, he has potential to have some big games. And, that offense is still trying to figure itself out. I think it's going to be very run heavy. So I kind of like Damian Harris as a leverage play at running back. He's pretty cheap. He's under 6,000, I think around 5,500. I'm not sure. Let me see here. Got him at 5,700. Okay. So yeah, and his ownership is low too. I have him at under 1% owned right now. So if he has a big game, he gets some good leverage there. Another guy I like at wide receiver, and I already talked to you about this, is Adam Thielen. He's only 5,400. There's a chance that Green Bay, Alexander's probably going to be covering Justin Jefferson. So those targets got to go somewhere. For some reason, Justin Jefferson does get locked down. And Adam Thielen has had some big games against Green Bay, and he gets a lot of targets in the red zone. Kirk Cousins likes him there. So I think Thielen, has a pretty good chance to be a solid leverage play.
Yeah. So I have him about 10% owned. Is that where you're projecting him?
Yeah, actually, a couple of weeks ago he was a lot lower, but I have him at about 9.4%. So he's just, for me, he's just over that threshold of 1 on that leverage score. So not a ton of leverage, but still at 5,400, I think there's good value there, and a little bit of leverage available.
Also, it's tough. This week it's tough to find those leverage spots. I think as the season goes on, you'll see those scores grow a little bit and make a little bit more sense. Ownership is very spread out so far. I don't know if it's because people are kind of waiting to commit to their lineups or whatever until Sunday news comes in. But all in all, we have a few players at 25% ownership. McCaffrey is going to garner 25+% ownership. I think Hurts is going to end up getting in the 25%-ish range of ownership. And otherwise, though, it's hard to find leverage when ownership is spread out. The way I define leverage is basically when I run my 150 lineups, or when I run my multiple lineups, it's the amount of times, the rate at which that player appears in my player pool. So Christian McCaffrey is 100% in my player pool right now, versus his ownership percentage. So that's how, and this is a leverage score that comes from the optimizer. It's basically 100% minus the ownership percentage, which for McCaffrey, let's say it's 30%. I'm getting a 70% leverage score on that player. It's just that the optimizer is recommending the player 70% more often than the field is playing them. So that's the leverage, and that's how I define it. So that allows for you, I think, a little bit differently than your score. It allows for high owned plays to also be leverage plays, but you to realize that leverage, you have to play a lot of lineups, if that makes sense. So I like yours because you can kind of calculate leverage in a singular lineup, whereas mine is leverage over an entire portfolio of lineups. So I think it's interesting to think about it that way. I like your way a little bit better, I think, and I'm interested to see kind of what we're able to do with that this year. But yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. Any other leverage plays you have for us before we get out of here?
I have one more, and it's crazy, but it's so crazy it just might win you $1 million.
Yeah, give us some of those weird ones before. Let's hear this one, and then I want to hear some of these big number ones because I'm interested in that.
Okay. All right. So behind Damian Harris at running back, kind of the second highest, most reasonable leverage score, Cordero Patterson,
Yeah,
5,800 for Atlanta. Yes, obviously going up against that very stout New Orleans offense. Defense. But Atlanta's offense, it's got to go through someone, right? I don't see Marcus Mariota throwing the ball downfield to Cordero Patterson or to Kyle Pitts or Drake London. Cordero Patterson, we know, is involved as more than just a running back. He's involved as a receiver too. I'm pretty sure he put up 2 touchdowns the last time he played New Orleans. He had a 20-point game in one of their 2 matchups against them last year. So it's someone who I have projected is only around 1% owned. That's a potentially a very high leverage play, but that's someone I'm only doing if I'm putting in like 150 lineups. You might consider trickling him in there.
Yeah. I like that play because I wanted to mention it's not popping in like the game score model. But the Saints Falcons game could shoot out. I don't think anybody wants to be on it just because the Falcons are going to be bad. These are just some preliminary things that I ran. As you can see here, here's a Jameis Winston lineup. Let me zoom in on that. Can you see that?
Yes.
So we can play around with this a little bit if you have like 5 more minutes, if that's cool with you. So basically, Jameis Winston here, stack him with Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is questionable. I think he's going to play. I almost would want to sub him out, especially, I don't think he's going to be owned. We don't even have a projection for him. I like Olave there, especially if he's cheaper. I don't know if he is or not. But there's Pittman, obviously, McCaffrey, my 100% owned. So as you can see, like you kind of want to take a barbell approach to this where I have these really low owned plays. And I set the optimizer up to do this for me. And we've talked about that. And balance them out with these really high owned plays. So I either want like what everybody's on or I want what nobody's on. I don't really want a bunch of 12% owned players. And you're going to hear this if you listen to a lot of podcasts, some ownership versus product ownership. So if I add all this up, and I hate that this is not working. I think that's 130%. I don't know. There's something's going on here. But if I add this up and then that's my sum ownership, if I multiply these together, okay, that's going to be my product ownership. And product ownership should be really low, like half of what your sum ownership is. That's what all the best lineups are doing. So they're building these barbell type constructions. This one is shaky. I just don't love Michael Thomas's health. Drake London's going to be limited. You could get weird and like swap out Drake London, put Pitts in instead of Kelsey, save yourself some cash, and then this is a good structure to start with, I think, for a really weird tournament build. What do you think about the Saints Falcons game? Anybody popping for you?
Absolutely not. That's a game I'm definitely trying to avoid.
Okay. All right.
As far as stacks go, I'm at least not bringing it back on the Atlanta side. I actually do kind of like. I had considered sprinkling Jameis Winston in, considering how cheap he is, and considering this is a guy he had a 5-touchdown game last year, and I think he had a 4-touchdown game before he went down. I think there's just a little bit of uncertainty how healthy are Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. How much is Alvin Kamara going to be involved? I know people were getting concerned at the beginning of last year. Jameis Winston isn't as frequent to check down as a guy like Drew Brees was. So it's risky, but there's definitely some leverage and upside there for sure.
Yeah, and then one thing to explain is like you can talk yourself into any play. Alvin Kamara could be a good play, right? Yeah. But the reason why we didn't bring him up like at all in this hour-long show is because when we run these, when I put my settings in, right? So what I'm doing is I'm setting up my projections. Let's see if I go to my optimizer here. I'm setting up my projections in a way that's following these basic rules that are based in research. Like there's actual research being done on this stuff. So I have a template here for my YOLO like tournament lineups. Okay. And those rules are I'm pairing a QB with at least 2 wide receivers, very specifically wide receivers, a QB with at least 1 wide receiver from the opponent to stack that up. And then what I'm eventually going to do is I'm just going to pick games, and I'm probably going to pick games that have those high game scores. So you see how this process is repeatable. I'm reducing the amount of noise in my process. And what's going to happen is I'm not going to get some of these players. I don't like to put too many restrictions on it. Usually I don't pick teams, but I may knock out a few teams. Like I don't really want a lot of Jets players because they're starting like a 5th round rookie against the Ravens defensive line. So I'm out on that. I can confidently say that I don't think the $1 million lineup is going to have a lot of Jets, but again, I've been wrong before. So that's one way to kind of force your optimizer to follow some of these rules that we know will show up in the $1 million lineups. And then some other things here is I'm kind of putting some leverage scores in here to kind of force leverage plays and also make sure I have some high owned plays balanced out with some really low owned plays. So when I apply those settings and I run it, there's some other stuff you can do here I'm going to play around with, but that's just like if you just want to play around with an optimizer on a free trial or whatever, that's a good set of rules to follow. So when I run that, let's see what comes up. Oh, I don't want to go by ceiling. So let's do 150. Generate. Let's see what we got here. All right, so I gave it too many parameters, so it doesn't like that. So let's get rid of one. Okay, I got a lot going on my computer. It might crash. I'm not gonna lie. I'm starting to push the limits of the processing power on this thing, which is good for the viewers. It means we're doing some big data stuff. But all right, okay. So that again, things have changed since I last ran this. Aaron Rodgers stacking up that game with Randall Cobb and bringing it back with Justin Jefferson. I love this lineup, dude. It's got a really good projection, great ownership. I mean, no one's going to play Aaron Rodgers, the 2-time returning MVP. Come on. What do you think about this lineup?
I had Randall Cobb. He has a pretty high leverage score in my lineups.
Yeah. And I'm seeing this a lot. So here's the thing. I'm probably going to run. So again, I'll explain to you a little bankroll challenge. I'm going $500 into this season for the full season. I'm going to try and grow it. I'm going to play $100 a week. So I'm essentially giving myself 5 chances to hit a little bit bigger in those 5 weeks. I'm going to split 50 into cash, 50-ish into cash, and play those cash game plays that we were playing, and just try to grow my kind of baseline bankroll there. And then I'm going to play tournaments and get weird with the other half. So I'm going to do different size contests, but I really like this lineup here for like a 3 entry, right? So I'll do a lineup like this. And then I know it's going to be popular to play McCaffrey and Barkley or 2 of these higher priced running backs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that, play lower priced, like lower owned running backs, and then play some of these like higher priced wide receivers just to flip kind of the popular build on its head to get different that way. And then if you do that, you don't really have to get as weird with some of these plays. Like I don't need to play Randall Cobb in a build like that. I can play Justin Jefferson with Jamar Chase. Like who's going to play that? You know what I mean?
So you're taking the DFS version of 0 running back approach.
Yeah, I can't get away from it. But yeah, again, when I'm trying to like play a 3 lineup tournament where I can only play 3, like I'll probably do one like this where I just like plug and play the optimal, one where I try to like galaxy brain and like flip things on its head, and then maybe pick another stack that I like and try to get some leverage there. And then the last thing here is when you're thinking about this stuff is what you can do is, and again, you're gonna have this in the Slack if you're part of the Slack and you subscribe and all that fun stuff. But I don't know if you ever take a look at this. You're not really like hand building as much as I am, but if you sort by salary, right, and you can kind of like see the way people are like building their lineups, you can see that like the highest owned plays, okay, a lot of these plays up here, people are like paying up at running back this week. Devontae Adams is the highest owned, is the wide receiver that's priced up that people are playing, but 11.5% is not really that popular. No one's playing Dalvin Cook. So one big pivot is instead of playing McCaffrey, play Cook. Like if you're right about that, you gain so much ground on the field, so much ground. And they're not that dissimilar plays. Dalvin Cook has shown that ceiling that not a lot of running backs have. And at one point we were drafting him and McCaffrey like back 1-2 in redraft leagues. So I think Cook's an interesting play. Is like I'll leave you guys with like probably the biggest leverage play on the week. Also Deebo Samuel, people just aren't going to play him this week. And again, anytime you get like high ceiling players that no one's going to play, like just let it rip. You know what I mean? In tournaments, people. But all right, that'll close it down. I mean, we could talk about this stuff for another 2 hours, I feel like, but I'm sure I'll be in the Slack channel with you talking up a little bit of strategy. I'm really not going to go like hard into building lineups, like seriously, until we have information about injuries and that. Like when Adam Schefter drops his like midnight injury dump, like it's game on. I'm gonna have to take a nap or something this morning. What about you? What's your process look like between now and tomorrow before we get out of here?
I'm on kind of the same boat. I mean, a lot of my projections right now are still assuming a lot of people are playing who are questionable. Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, even Alan Lazard, I still have in my projections since he hasn't been officially rolled out. So, like you said, a lot of things are going to change when that finally, when all that information drops. So, yeah, this could be coming down to the last minute. In the meantime, I'll run with what I have, maybe even exclude those questionable guys and see what's see what the optimizer is leaning towards.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like one thing I like to do before kickoff is like give myself an hour just to, if I have 150 lineups, right, just get eyes on as many as possible and like especially sort by the ones that are the lowest owned and just looking like, does it pass the sanity check? Like, is this in the realm of possibilities? Because the optimizer is great, but it's not tethered to reality. It's tethered to data that's based in reality, but it doesn't know things. Our Gridiron model does know things like weather. It does know things like home and away, like, but it doesn't know that last minute late scratch, unfortunately, which we can keep running it up until kick, but you have to be building lineups before that, right? So if you know, so we know Alan Lazard's probably not going to play. We know that. It doesn't make sense to build lineups with him right now. And that's why, as you saw, when I ran that latest run of optimizer, it's excluding Alan Lazard, which must be boosting the projections for everybody else. And that's why we're having Green Bay lineups that are low owned, high leverage, high value, all that fun stuff. So good luck out there this week. Rob, thanks for joining me. Always a pleasure. Hopefully we can stay more consistent with this week. If not, I'll try to be on here every Saturday or Sunday live stream. You know I love to talk, so I'll just keep rolling even if I'm solo. But Rob, hopefully we can see you soon. And thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick, and I'm available next week, so let's do this again.
All right, let's get started. So make sure you check us out over at gridironai.com. 1 month free, all caps, get you a month free, and see how our models do. Maybe place a couple money line bets, and you can put your lineups in from your fantasy league, so it'll tell you who to start and who to sit. That way you don't have to message me on Twitter. But please do. You can find me at run_the_sims on Twitter. Rob, you want to pump your Twitter handle real quick?
No, I'm not.
All right.
I'm
so
not
Rob
a Twitter guy.
Okay, neither am I. So don't expect a whole lot. The best place to find any ideas or content that I'm thinking about is to just go to the site, go to the Slack and ask me questions directly, or check us out on Instagram on gridiron.ai. All right, everybody, let's get out of here. Good luck and have a good weekend. Later.